It is 1:30 in the morning, and we are here at what we think is the base of Mount Ijen, which we're about to head out to climb.
We're ready to go into the crater. Liz has her gas mask on. Looks like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie.
Alright, we're at the blue flames, and they are blue because of the high sulfur content in it. So,
I think they're really hot too.
I imagine. But people are mining in this. It's crazy.
How warm was it? It's not that warm.
We were surprised by how many people climbed Mount Ijen. Like, there were hundreds, if not possibly 1,000 people who climbed the same day we did. And they all go in the wee hours of the morning to see the blue flames as well. And amongst all these many tourists are sulfur miners.
The sulfur is created when volcanic gases are channeled through ceramic pipes. When it condenses, it then cools and forms the characteristic yellow blocks.
So the sulfur is mined for cosmetics as well as to color sugar. We actually didn't know much about the sulfur miners before we came to Banyuwangi.
Our homestay host has actually been guiding people up Mount Ijen for over 20 years. He's gotten to know the sulfur miners really well in his time guiding.
And so he was super passionate about the sulfur miners and the conditions that they work in and how tourists treat the sulfur miners. And so we had a long conversation the night before we summited. We were really shocked by the conditions they work in. The fumes are so strong, all tourists wear a gas mask.
Even with the gas masks and the goggles that we wore, when the wind would pick up and blow the sulfur gas, it would make us cough and it would sting our eyes really bad. And the sulfur miners don't wear any kind of protection when they're in there. The sulfur miners aren't actually employees of any company. They're what is referred to as freelance contractors. Essentially, the company will just pay them per kilogram of sulfur that they bring. So by doing this, they're able to avoid total responsibility for the well-being of the miners. There is a clear difference between working hard and the kinds of conditions that the sulfur miners work. They have long-term health consequences from the work that they do there.
The average sulfur miner lives just past 50 years old, whereas the general population for an Indonesian man is an estimated life expectancy of 69 years.
The miners carry 150 to 200 pounds on one side of their shoulder, up 300 meters. They often end up with permanent spinal damage and calloused shoulders due to the heavy weight that they're lifting and carrying so far. And they do this 1 to 2 times per day. We've seen different estimates on how much they're paid, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of $5 to $7 per trip. It might be on the higher end, but because sometimes there's impurities in the sulfur that they bring down, the company will automatically deduct a certain amount and then pay them less.
I spoke at length with a sulfur miner. He was probably about my age, but he says he's been mining for about 15 years, so that means he started as a teenager. Per the suggestion of our homestay host, we brought packages of cookies. So I offered him some cookies and we chatted for a bit while he waited for the fumes to die down. He told me about how much he hates the work he does, but he does it to support his family. I asked him why he didn't use a gas mask and why the other sulfur miners didn't use a gas mask, and he told me that the company doesn't provide it. It's too much money. So throughout our conversation, he kept going in and out of the fumes when it would die down to extract more sulfur, and he was coughing, closing his eyes. Like, you could clearly tell this was very taxing on his body. We didn't get it on camera because it was pitch dark, and honestly we felt uncomfortable putting a camera in front of the sulfur miner's face when he was clearly suffering. We did film the sulfur miners when we went down deeper into the crater. There were some miners sorting the sulfur, and we asked permission to film them and gave them lots of cookies. All of them seemed really appreciative.
So out of curiosity, I wanted to get a feel for how much weight that they're carrying.
How many kilos? Okay. Can I lift? It's good?
Try lifting it up, honey. Like, bend your knees. Lift.
Yo, ano ra ruwet ra.
Okay. Oh my goodness. This is crazy. And they walk all the way out there. Okay. Let's bring it down.
You don't think you can go up to 800 meters up the crater?
No. There's no way. So how many kilos? 70? Yes. Okay.
And
wow.
you do 2 a day, or how many do you do a day?
How many? Just 2 times. 2 times? Go up, you done. Okay. Wow. How long does it take? How many hours? How many berapa jam? 3. For satu? And then 3 for the second time. Wow. So it takes 3 hours to lift this one all the way up there. And they do that twice.
I don't understand how they would be able to lift it all the way up the 300 meters or 1,000 feet to the crater rim.
And most sulfur miners we spoke to make 2 trips per day. In many countries, there are labor laws that prevent this type of exploitation. One thing we learned in doing research about this, when we first heard that the average sulfur miner makes about $5 per trip, we were appalled. But upon further research, this is actually considered good income for them. However, it's obviously incredibly taxing. If they get injured, which the injury rate is high, they have no compensation or protection. They just lose that source of income. There's been lots of news stations that have done stories on this because this is such a popular tourist activity in Indonesia. We're definitely not the first ones to cover this. From our research we've gathered, a lot of the sulfur miners don't want to rock the boat. Like, yes, they want to be compensated more. Yes, they know they have horrible conditions, but they fear losing their income. For us, it was just kind of crazy that such a popular tourist place. Honestly, this was the highest concentration of tourists I feel like I've seen in our entire time in Indonesia. There were so many people who do the same narrow path. And the fact that so many people do this right alongside the sulfur miners who are working really hard was just kind of a crazy contrast to me. So that same sulfur miner that I spoke to when we first arrived in the crater, we ran into as he was headed up the mountain, and he was carrying up his baskets full of the sulfur. He had been stopped by a foreigner to take a selfie with a chunk of his sulfur. And I've learned that this is actually fairly common. People go there to get a selfie with this sulfur miner. I just thought this was very inappropriate. We actually exchanged a look of like mutual understanding of like how inappropriate this was. So, and he still did it because he was a very nice guy. He still did the selfie with tourists. If we have other people who find our channel and are going to be climbing Mount Ijen, just to be really respectful of the sulfur workers. Don't stop them when they're walking up. Actually move out of their way. So they're carrying such heavy weight. And I think Alex, like, seeing how much he's struggled with the basket kind of put it in perspective for us of like how hard they're working really.
And I just lifted it. That's all I did. I lifted it and held it on my shoulder for 15, 20 seconds. And that was all like I really don't think I could have walked any further than like a few feet with the basket. It was just so heavy, and I was just so imbalanced, and I can't even begin to describe how difficult that is. Like, go put a 200-pound barbell on your shoulder and it feels worse than that.
We were so glad we brought cookies. I think that everyone should do that, honestly. Bring something for the sulfur miners, make their day a little bit easier. They work really hard, and just remember that they are people like us. Try to put yourself in their shoes. Treat them with respect. So this was just a really brief overview of the sulfur mining. There's so much stuff online. There's multiple documentaries out there. We're gonna link some articles and a YouTube video that we saw with our homestay host down below if you wanna learn more. We are leaving Indonesia to head to our next country. We've loved Indonesia. Like, there's so many things to do in Indonesia. And honestly, it feels like we just scratched the surface. But we are headed to our next country, which we are excited to explore as well. It was kind of an unexpected add-on country.
For sure.
But we ended up having a great time, and we're excited to show you that on our next video. Ijen for
Mount Ijen.
Sorry, I don't know, I always mess it up. Ghost.
Type. Blah.
You know. Blah.